My guest today is Sana Khan, founder of Ihsan Academy of Texas Microschool, which is a full-time, faith-based, in-person program serving grades 1 to 8 in Katy, Texas. The word Ihsan is Arabic for excellence, highlighting the vision of the school to provide excellence in both the knowledge and application of the Islamic faith and academic scholarship. Sana is a board certified family medicine physician who has been in practice now for over 10 years and who began homeschooling her two boys, who are now 12 and 7, when COVID first hit. They spent several years of homeschooling and then shifted to traditional school models, trying five faith-based traditional schools in a matter of a year and a half, including one that was almost an hour and a half away from home each way. So, still, Sana was not satisfied with the options available to her and decided that it was time to build. So, Sana Khan, welcome to the Liberated Podcast.
Carrie, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here today.
I'm so excited to have you here. Thank you so much for reaching out to me and sharing a little bit about your microschool journey and how you are getting ready to launch for the first time this August, August 18th. You'll open your doors with 10 students, including your two boys. And that is really the max enrollment that you want at this point. And we'll get more into the details of your school and the structure and the motivation for becoming a school founder, in addition to your continuing role as a family physician. I'd love to start, if we could, Sana, with what was happening in terms of your children's education before COVID, and then how did that change during 2020?
Yeah, gosh. So yeah, Carrie, I'll start with the COVID and then I'll kind of, go back and then forward from there. So really the turning point for our family in terms of our children's education was when COVID first hit. Up until then, as a family and as a professional, I was following the expected path that I myself had expected, going into the field of medicine. I was working as a full-time physician right around the 2019 years, kind of where I'm at right now. And my our second child had just been born. He was a year and a half to two, so not just, but he was still a baby. And our older, who was about 7, 8 years old at the time, was in first grade. So, and he was
And
in a
I was going to
Montessori,
say, what kind of school?
yeah,
Yeah.
a private. It was a Montessori, it was not faith-based at that time, but we loved that learning environment. That teacher was just so nurturing. She really instilled a love of learning and of reading that has stayed with him since then. So it was a beautiful environment for him. Unfortunately, when they closed and went virtual, like so many schools did around that time, it just he was too young for the virtual thing. Still loved his teacher, but no longer loved the way he was learning. Fell asleep in the middle of these virtual sessions many times because it was just so difficult for these young children. And so we decided it was time for something else. I'll be honest, we have always wanted to do a faith-based kind of an education model for our children. Never really sat down, myself and my husband never sat down and talked about it since we got married and had kids. Life was just kind of going along. But homeschooling is not an environment that I come from. It's not a model that I myself was a recipient of. I don't know any families who have been homeschooled. And so I'm very much a product of the traditional learning environment. And honestly, I don't know if I should say this here or not, but I thrived in that environment. So, for me to be where I am now, I'd retrospectively think about, wow, that was quite, quite a leap. But as I'll explain, it really was everything that was happening throughout was informing all my choices that I have made now. So anyway, so at the time we decided, okay, let's go ahead and start this faith-based homeschool that we've been wanting that we now want to do. So it was a very natural choice for me to be the one to take the back seat in my job. And so I went from full time to part time at the time, and my husband continued to work full time. He's an electrical engineer. He works as a corporate, executive. He has the same job. Dan has the same job now, has been doing that all these years. So when I first began, I'm the kind of person who, when I do something, I want to just deep dive into it. I don't want to just, do it a little bit at a time. So when homeschooling happened for us in 2019, starting 2020, I was just like, I'm going to go all out. I had an orientation for my only child in our living room, had just the whole, kind of thing. I'm so blessed. God has blessed us so much with a child who just gave me his all. At no point did he make me feel like we were just like a one person show, that this wasn't worth it. What are we doing in our own home? We just went all in. And so as I started to build our homeschool and started to look for, materials to teach from, books to teach from, I was very directed from the start in my mind, the kind of books and materials that I wanted to have in our homeschool. I never questioned myself in terms of what kind of curriculum should I be using. And I'll explain, if we have time, as to what got me there. As a student, and I know this now, I didn't back then, but as a student throughout my life, in medical school, now in my master's as well, I've always unconsciously tried to think from the perspective of the teacher. After I, as a student, absorb the content, I always kind of go behind the scenes. And this is such an unconscious automatic process for me. I don't know why it happens, but that's just how my brain is. How did this professor choose to give this content to the class, and why? And did it work for me, or is there another way that I maybe would have done it if I was teaching it? So throughout all these years, all of these things are collecting in my mind. So knowing my child, knowing how he learns best, I was able to kind of curate a curriculum that was working for him. Now, right around this time was when I was guided by God to also start the Ihsan Academy platform, that was on Facebook. And that primarily was to share our own journey as a homeschooling family and become connected with other like-minded families who were making the same choice, had already been homeschooling, or making that decision at that time, like we had. And so this was such a beautiful platform. It was almost a daily thing where I would connect with moms and sometimes dads and teachers alike, and we shared ideas. And that is really where also I got a lot of feedback on these stories that I began to write, which became a part of our curriculum. So as I said, I was looking for materials to teach from, found a lot of good stuff that was out there. God bless the parents and the educators who put so much time into putting these things out on teacherspayteachers.com or whatever else it might be, and don't ask for much in return. So, but found a lot of good stuff, but also there were some gaps of what I was looking for and I didn't find. My propensity has always been to write stories. I've loved to, my major in undergrad was I double majored in English and then cell biology and neuroscience. So that kind of, inkling and tendency to write stories came up again as a homeschooling family. And so I decided to start writing these stories, which were faith-based, and, gave my son the chance to understand the message of our scripture in a story format. But these stories kind of came about at the same time as the virtual platform was being built, and the families were so, great with the feedback that they provided, and all of that was happening anyway at that platform level. And so moving forward from there, this lasted for about a good 5 years. We were so happy, just a blissful homeschooling family. And so now you might ask, why then would you do anything different if this was working so well? So life happens, the demands of professional life, not so much that, I'd say, because that was my own choice, but I saw a keenness in my son, who was now at that point around 11 years old. I saw a keenness in him of wanting to be with kids his age, and I completely expected that to happen at some point in time. And so we decided to let's go ahead. And I never wanted to give up the homeschooling thing. I just wanted to for him to have a classroom experience, a real school experience, and then always continuing the homeschooling journey after the hours where he was in school or on Saturdays and Sundays. And so we went ahead and made that choice. We enrolled both our kids. My younger one also was old enough at that time. So both of them in a private faith-based school. And we are so lucky to live in a city where we have so many options in that sense. So, in a matter of about 2 years, we tried about five schools, the last of which you were talking about. I'll talk about that a little bit more as well. And as as great as these schools are, and as sincere the intentions of the founders and the teachers are, so many good things happening in these schools. The gaps for us mostly were around the transformation of knowledge into action. We didn't see a whole lot of that. And it's hard to explain, but we spent so much time cultivating and nurturing an environment in our homeschool, which was really centered around characteristics of our scripture in action format. So compassion, empathy, community service for others, respect, honesty, standing up for what's right. And while all of this was in some format being taught in the school system, there was just this void of seeing it in our kids. And so when I realized that it's having an impact on their spiritual progress and growth the way that we wanted it to be, we decided that, it may be time for returning back to what we had before. But before that happened, that last school that really kind of pushed us forth was an environment that we actually really come to like came to like, and this was the one that was the 6 months prior to our opening the micro school, to the seed of the micro school really kind of sprouting. And so we had found a learning environment which may not have been perfect, but it was an environment that was better than all the other ones with the value systems in mind that we had wanted. So, but it was an hour and 20 minutes away from home each way. However, we had figured out our family life around it. I was working in a clinic. My clinic is super awesome. We have so many different sites in our city for that particular clinic, so I can really work in whichever one I want. And so I had figured out my clinic over there. The kids were doing well. I was supplementing after school as well, like I wanted to, but unfortunately we got some inkling of it about a month prior to it actually happening. But in January of 2025, the school announced that it was closing. And it had to do with financial reasons. It was a new school. They didn't get a whole lot of enrollment, unfortunately. People just didn't know about it in the city, and they just could not get enough, to be able to stay open. So they closed down.
So
And
then
so
you're
we
back
went
to square one.
So we're back to square one. And Carrie, this is where you came in. Honestly, this is not an exaggeration of any sort at all. When we were back to square one, my husband and I had been talking about for years we had been talking about this. Our nightly talks were about kind of a school system would be ideal for our kids. And what little did we know, what we had all this time been talking about and describing had a name called Microschool, which we had no idea about at the time. So right around January, we started to seek out, other things that were out there. And my husband actually was the first one who came across something called a microschool. And he talked to me about it. And I was like, okay, that just sounds like a tinier version of a school. That sounds great. And then when I started to look into it a little bit more, I found your podcast. Along with a couple of other things, one of which was actually, I think you've had this guest on your show as well, uh, Mackenzie Oliver from Teacher
Mackenzie
Let Your
Oliver.
Light Shine.
Yeah, she's
My God,
lovely.
her energy was just amazing and contagious. I listen to her almost every morning. So alongside your podcast and her, amazingness, I came to find out that there's an actual schooling system that a lot of people are doing, and it sounds just like what we've been wanting to do.
Hmm.
And it just felt like a practical something that we can actually do instead of talking about it in our heads. And so that was it. That was the seed, and it sprouted. And from January 2025, now we're in July, we've been able to find a place, which is where I am at right now. It's close to home. It's 20 minutes away from home. So it's really nice. And we've been able to open enrollment, get it all set up, open enrollment, do our school tours. And now we have 8 families besides ourselves. We have 2 kids of our own, but 8 families that are ready to start with us in August.
Ah, congratulations.
Thank
Such an
you.
exciting accomplishment. How did you go about recruiting families to your new school, new microschool, and what were these families looking for?
Yeah, so Carrie, I think what really did help us is I think the time frame from, it being real short from January to now, um, is I would attribute that to the fact that we already had a platform on Facebook. So a lot of the the faith-based homeschooling groups that I was also a part of, whether that be on Facebook or WhatsApp, had in some capacity heard of us. And they knew us through the website that I had also put up. And I would just any resource I would make, whether it be science resource, which I made a whole book out of, or the stories that I was talking about before, I would just kind of continue to put all of this stuff on there. And not just from my end, I would, get a lot of different ideas from all of these different parents as well. So that knowledge of the name Ihsan Academy being a homeschool really helped. So when we decided to market our school, all we did was convert Ihsan Academy Homeschool, which is what it was called before, to now Ihsan Academy of Texas Microschool. So that in itself just kind of reflected our story because it was just all there from 2019 up until 2025 on our page. Um, our primary methods of marketing were online. We did print flyers very early, but the box of flyers is still sitting in my bookshelf at home, and we never actually had to use them at this point. Maybe next year. But that was our primary method. And then I'm sorry, I forgot the last thing you asked.
Well, I was just asking what was attracting families to
Yeah.
Ihsan Academy.
Yeah. So when I sat down and talked to the families, we did every single family that came in for a tour was about an hour to an hour and a half long, where I would just sit with them in our lobby and just ask them this exact thing that you're asking now. And time again, the same things were coming up where they were uh, they were okay with the faith-based Islamic schooling that they had currently happening for their child, but the class sizes were too large. It wasn't personalized enough. The action-based approach wasn't there. What are the other things? Those were the primarily, most often the things that would come up the most often. Yeah.
So most of the families, or all of them, it sounds like were already in a traditional faith-based private school.
Yeah.
They weren't
Yeah.
previously homeschooling.
No, actually, we got families. So the majority of the families that were attracted to our model were
Okay.
homeschoolers. And they are the families that are part of a homeschooling co-op in our area. So they've been doing this kind of a hybrid model where their child still gets the socialization of a co-op, but then they're doing their own thing in the homeschool. But their main thing has been, there's no structure to the homeschool,
Mm.
and that can happen. I know I can vouch for it, even though we went all in with all our energies, that would still be some days here and there that would be like, what did we do today? And that's all part of homeschooling. That's fine. But I think some people are just looking for that structure, on a daily basis. Now we did also get, so I wouldn't say exactly half. I would say maybe 60% to 70% of our families are homeschooling,
Okay.
are coming from that background. The 20 to 30%, I would say, are coming from the faith-based Islamic schooling background. And then we did get some interest from public schooling families as well.
Mm.
But for the most part, the interesting thing is, in terms of the faith perspective that all of these families were coming from, I think the requirement was pretty much the same in terms of the connection to the faith in a more at a communal level, at not just sitting and studying something in theory, but seeing it in practice and being able to practice it with others around you.
Mm.
I think that was very focused. That was a focal point. Yeah.
Now, are all the families going to be technically considered homeschoolers attending your micro school?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
we are definitely operating under the homeschooling laws in
Yeah.
Texas. And so at this point, yeah, whoever is coming from the Islamic faith-based in-person schooling is now going to be under the homeschooling, microschooling laws. Yeah.
Yeah, and do you think you'll I'm sort of jumping ahead, but do you think you'll stay as a micro school? Do you ever think, well, maybe we'll grow and eventually become a private school, which is relatively easy to do in Texas too? What is your thought of the
Yeah.
difference? Yeah.
Oh gosh, Carrie, I haven't, we haven't gotten a chance to really get that
Yeah.
far in our planning and our thinking about this. We're taking it one day at a time. Really, we're so grateful for being blessed with what we have been given, this wonderful opportunity. Um, I'm not opposed to this idea of it expanding. But I want to really hold close to why we did this in the first place. And I feel like expanding, if expansion were to come with the will of God, it would need to happen in a way that still maintains the integrity of the idea. Because then I would feel like we're not doing anything different than the environments that we are coming from. The
Right,
whole
right.
reason that we started this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that really that family-centered approach that you're really able to focus on the values that matter to you and the families you're serving, and just being able to have that flexibility
Right.
is what makes microschooling so special. So you're opening your doors August 18th,
Yeah.
and what does it feel like for you to now be a founder, a school founder, right? Does it feel different than being a homeschooling mom for the past several years? What is that experience like now?
It feels different, Carrie. It's nice. It's really, really nice to have, first of all, a direct, like an actual boundary between home and school. I think I think just walking in through the doors even now every day, because I'm still here with my kids every day in the summertime, and we do our thing that we normally would be doing at home. But it's really nice for them to have a space to do your language arts and literature. And here we do this, here we do that. So that has been real nice for us. In terms of an educator for the whole learning group, that's really where my gratitude, my innermost gratitude comes from the most. I feel like there were so many things in my homeschooling journey with only my son and then my other son for just a little bit of time where I was like, it would be so great to do this in a group setting. This read aloud that I'm doing, oh my gosh, I would just love to have this particular activity after this, and how awesome would it be for the kids to hear each other's ideas and discuss among themselves. And there's so many different things like that that were just going through my mind. And I was like, well, it's just us though. And that's okay for now. But now I'm just excited about all of these different possibilities. So it's been amazing.
Yeah, and you are not only the founder, but also the main teacher, and that sort of by design, why you also want to stay capped at 10 students this year. Um, do you think that you'll bring in other educators over time? I guess what is your sense of beyond this first year?
Yeah, I'm absolutely open to that. The first year, though, I this is why we wanted to cap it at 10 because I want that sweet spot of all the potentials that we can have in a small group, kind of a learning environment. Um, but not to overwhelm in a way where the personalization part of it goes away, you know. And I definitely just wanted it to be me and the kids in the first year. And the reason I want to do that is I want to be able to understand, you know, what this would look like in a manifested form. You know, it's all kind of up here. Yes, I've done it with my own kids, and I'm super excited to bring it to others, but I want to see what it looks like. And when I do, if and when we do, you know, open our doors to other te teachers, I want to be able to give them a very clear vision of what it should look like in practice, not just on paper. So once I've had a year under my own belt, I'll be able to talk from that experience, I think, a little bit more to them.
Yeah, I think that that's such a good idea to just sort of stay focused on quality and mission and size, and then grow if and when it makes sense to do that. So you are offering your program as a full-time micro school, 5 days a week. Tell us a little bit about how you envision the week schedule and rhythms going.
Yeah, so it's quite a specific structured program, not structured in so much the way what the kids will be doing here, because that's a collaborative environment. It's quite free. It's very much homeschool-like in that sense than a traditional, you know, environment. But in terms of how I have envisioned it and explained it to the parents and what we're offering, we have three things that are the foundation of the micro school. The first thing is that the curriculum is integrated. It's faith-based and it's integrated whenever it is possible. The second thing it is that it is a differentiated instruction learning environment. I am a certified educator in that now, and I love that model. It actually was born out of both our kids being such different learners, one being very much a reader and writer like myself, and my second one being very visual and hands-on. So I just wanted to go that route because of that reason too. And then the third one is that action-oriented experiential learning, community service-based approach. Now, all of that, I've just my background in neuroscience, and just as I was talking about before, looking at the from the angle of the educator, even as a student, as to why this particular teacher, you know, decided to teach this thing in that way, how the brain gains knowledge, and you know, how that best happens for all of us. Thinking through all of that, I have decided on a thematic approach. So we do theme-based learning. Every week is going to be a new theme. And the themes start out with the scripture, with some verses of the scripture, and then it's also station based. So I know I'm saying a lot, but it when you see it in practice, it's a lot more understandable. But all of the stations are the different tracks that we do. So it's literature, science, all of the core concepts of the core tracks. All of those are given from the perspective of the theme of the week. So the idea is that, you know, you start here with one little theme and then you approach it in a horizontal manner where you expand here on Monday when you first find out a theme, and then throughout the week you're expanding your kind of your focus and understanding a lot more about that theme. And by Friday, the idea is that you will have more of a depth of understanding on the scriptural level and the academic level as well. So
Mm. Ah, it sounds so well thought out, Sana, and like it will be such a fabulous place for learning and growth for these children. You mentioned that the traditional private school that you were in just before deciding to launch was working well, although it was far away, and it closed down. And you said it was, you know, likely due to financial reasons. When you think about the financial model of running your micro school, you know, how does that look, and how do you sort of ensure financial sustainability?
yeah, so our tuition and fee, the you know curriculum fee, all of that is pretty on par with all of the other private Islamic schools here in our city. We are maybe even on the lower side. And again, that is a blessing from God that we both have professional, stable careers that we're able to use to sustain this school. So as I said, I'm continuing to work part-time after school hours on the weekends. I'm really blessed to have that flexibility. And so that is allowing us to kind of keep on with the financial aspect of it. Yeah.
Yeah. And what is your sense of the microschool movement overall now that you've discovered it and are a part of it?
Yeah.
What is
Yeah.
your thought on sort of the future of microschooling and these other innovative, individualized learning environments?
I think the future of education are these kinds of learning environments. I think that there is so much potential for personalization according to whomever is opening the school and what they're bringing into the model, and just a movement away from the standardization that we so often see, that one size fits all kind of model that we just know, it just not even we don't even need to see it in practice. It just wouldn't work because we're not all the same. And so it's exciting to see where all of this goes in terms of, talking from my own experience and a member of the community that I am a part of. Microschooling in our community is still fairly a new concept. A lot of parents who came through our doors didn't know what a microschool was. So just that process of educating them and then seeing in their faces first kind of a confounding look, because a lot of people I think are still married to the idea of traditional school, or school should look a certain way, it should
Mm,
feel a certain way, it should be a certain way. And so having this one room schoolhouse model where there's one teacher and 10 kids, if they've never heard of it before, I can completely understand how bizarre even that could sound. But then, like looking at the school and then envisioning finally the possibilities of what could be, and seeing their child getting that one-on-one attention, and really the teacher knowing where the child is in their journey, what they're good at, what their potential is. That is a very new thing, I think, for a lot of parents when they're coming from especially traditional school systems. But nobody has yet said, once they understand this in our school tours, I've never had the experience where someone's like, well, I get it, but I still don't want to do it. It's not
mhm.
like that. If they don't come on board, it's because they're not ready yet. And so hopefully at a
Interesting.
certain point in the future, they will be.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because once you hear what a microschool can offer in terms of that individualization and the ability to really find a program that's aligned with your values and
Yeah.
educational philosophy, it's hard to go back
Oh
to
my
the one
gosh,
size fits all model.
absolutely. Absolutely. But I feel for parents because and this is why I want a lot of people to find out about it and to
Mm,
perhaps open up their own micro schools or do something
yeah,
in the way of this, because there is a ceiling effect, right? In the school system, there's just not enough spaces in a micro school. We've had so many other inquiries
right.
since we closed our enrollment, and I just couldn't take anymore.
Yeah.
And so I'm really hoping that more and more people will find out and take the leap to opening one of their own, hopefully.
Yeah, there's clearly lots of demand, not only in your community, but across the country. So, what advice would you give, Sana, for those listening or watching, thinking about starting a micro school? What would you suggest they do?
You know, wherever they're at, even if they're not in the space where they feel that they're ready to open up micro school, I think my general advice for everybody is to keep your minds open to ideas of a different learning environment. Don't be married to the idea that school should look a certain way. Schooling and education are very different things, as I know you know that, Carrie. And just keep that in mind and just be open to different ideas. And if and when the chance comes to you, understand that it is from God, and don't dismiss it. Go along that path, see what God has in store for you. And if you're going to be a founder by the will of God, then that's the journey that you'll take. Yeah.
So, Sana, if my listeners and viewers want to follow your journey and connect with you, what is the best way for them to do that and learn more about your microschool?
Yeah, so the two biggest spaces that I update are the Facebook page, which is under Ihsan Academy of Texas, and then our website is inspireihsan.org.
Wonderful. Well, I look forward to hearing how your first year goes, having you back on the show to reflect on your journey as an education entrepreneur some more, and look forward to seeing what's next with all of those families in your community who want what you're building. Hopefully, there'll be more opportunities for them to partake of the microschooling model in the near future. So, Sana Khan, well, thank you so much for being on the Liberated podcast and best wishes to you.
Thank you so much, Carrie. Thank you so much.